Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Timothy Adon, composer by day, gamer by night. And today I am essentially updating one of my previous videos. An episode I have done previously was to talk about various DAWs and maybe give a little insight as to which ones to pick up. And I am updating that by making a new episode. By making a new video talking about DAWs again, with my updated knowledge and the fact that lots of DAWs have changed over time, and knowing a little bit more about what to potentially look for when purchasing a DAW, or digital audio workstation, for those of you that don't like acronyms very much. So the first DAW we're going to talk about is Sonar X4. It looks like a number of things have changed between my current edition, which is Sonar X2, and the one that's currently going about, which is Sonar X4. A couple cool things. There's a drum replacer so that you can extract individual hits and use those in a kind of a MIDI style fashion. Extract hits from WAV files and samples and libraries and such, which is pretty cool. It also has this new vocal sync feature so that you can sync multiple layers of vocals together in a fashion in order to enhance doubling and choruses and make it a little bit tighter, which is very handy, assuming you do things with vocals all the time. They did make it so that almost everything is pretty modular. Everything can collapse or everything can expand as far as like the control bar, all of the various windows and stuff. And that's kind of cool if you want to move your workstation around a bit. I don't tend to use things like that all that often. And for that matter, I don't tend to use vocal recordings all that often. I usually do a bunch of MIDI recording. One of the cool features added in is mix recall, which essentially allows you to A/B different mix settings quickly and easily so that you don't lose any settings that you've changed, and you can easily swap between the settings to see which one you like the best. And that, I think, is a very handy feature, especially if you change one thing and then make a number of smaller changes and then forget what it was that you changed before, like with fader settings or automation settings and the like. Another thing that they added on that's pretty cool is an on-screen virtual controller. It's really, I think it's cool in that it exists, but I wouldn't use it all that often. And really what it's there for is if you don't have a hardware controller to input MIDI notes, then you have this, which you can use to click on with your mouse. You can straight up play from your laptop keyboard or desktop keyboard. I use a laptop in order to input notes, and that is pretty cool. Or if you have a touchscreen, Sonar X4 and I think X3 as well has touchscreen support, so that if you are using a tablet or something, you could use the on-screen virtual controller to play on your tablet screen. So that is pretty handy and very cool for those of you that are in the high-tech world with your ding-dang computer phones and the like. With the audio snap features, you have an easier time stretching, snapping to loops, and overall being able to fix your clips in such a way that it'll easily fit alongside any other clip that you have by snapping to the right time, as well as being able to stretch to the right tempo. So a couple more useful things. There's the pattern tool. So if you do a lot of MIDI composition like I do, you'll probably end up creating lots of patterns like da 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 da. That's the extent of singing you're getting from me. And most of the time you end up having to copy and paste patterns like that if you want it to go for an extended period of time, or just plug it in with the mouse or with a keyboard. But if you don't want to do any of those things, you can use the pattern tool, which essentially just allows you to paint the pattern across your track, which is handy. It wasn't necessary, but it's a nice little handy tool. You know, it's there, I'm going to use it. But if it wasn't there, I wouldn't care that much. And the other thing is Melodyne, which I actually had to look this up separately. I didn't realize it was a separate piece of software, but I guess it's Sonar improved support with Melodyne. which I looked it up, and it seems like it's a very handy way to edit waveform audio in a fashion like MIDI. If you look at this picture, it's tracking where all of the audio is on a piano roll view, and then you have the capacity to edit this like it were MIDI notes. So that seems very cool, and the fact that they made it so that it's easier to use within Cakewalk is kind of awesome. So I'm going to have to take a look at that, because that could be very handy. And then after that, they added a whole bunch of built-in instruments, built-in plugins, drum instruments, custom virtual amps to give you that nice warm fuzzy feeling inside your guitar. And the ability to export in Ogg Vorbis. But if I saw correctly, at least the way that it works with Sonar X2 is that you have to buy the ability to export MP3s, which I could do for free in Audacity if I really wanted to. So I find that very odd, and I feel like that they still have it so that you can't export an MP3 unless you buy the capacity to do so. I don't really understand that. So overall, Cakewalk Sonar X4 is a very all-around utility DAW. You can do piano roll composition. It has a notation view for notation view composition and exportation. It has pitch correction. It has support for Melodyne for even more waveform recording edits. And it has a slew of different plugins for everything from audio to instruments to amps and effects. I may or may not update to X4. There are a couple things in here I might find handy, and it's a fairly inexpensive DAW compared to others. So keep this one on your radar. It's pretty cool. It has some cool things, and it's definitely like given that X2 is like the only DAW I've really used. There are two other DAWs I've used, but it's the only one that I use a lot. I would call this the nice baseline for what a DAW is. And that's it for Sonar X4. Moving on to the next DAW. Next we're going to talk about is Pro Tools. And, well, first and foremost, this is like kind of an old enemy of mine. Mostly because, and I'm going to put this out there right now, a lot of people like to say that you aren't a real audio professional unless you use Pro Tools. And that made me very upset. One, because it's completely untrue, and two, because it's completely untrue. And it's very upsetting when elitist people like that decide to be jerks and say such things. So I have completely stayed away from Pro Tools because I'm spiteful and I like to prove people wrong. But, you know, need to talk about it because it's important. This is a very well-known tool in the industry, so obviously it's going to go in this video. Now, when looking this up, I oddly enough could not find a lot of useful information about it. And, you know, that happens for one of two reasons. It's either A, doesn't have a lot going on, or B, it has too much going on. And I'm more willing to bet that it's the second one. The reason that it is so widely used in the industry is because it has functions for just about everything. It has everything you need for recording, for mixing, for mastering. Going through the list of stuff here, it has all kinds of support, and it's getting more. It's going to have support for more audio tracks and lower latency. It's going to have even more useful plugins. It's going to have iPad control. Who cares, honestly? This is going to be a really cool thing that comes up soon. You're going to be able to collaborate with other people using Pro Tools on the internet. The internet, man, it's like magic. You'll be able to access your work from the internet as well, which obviously that's probably just coupled in with the cloud collaboration. This is kind of interesting, is they have a subscribe payment method, and that's cool. Pro Tools, I need to say this now, is incredibly expensive. It's like $1,000 for the full thing. And I think they do have a free version that has like limited capabilities and stuff. But you do have the capacity to pay monthly or yearly for it, and that is like, but of course you're not actually paying for it. You're paying for the capacity to use it. So you, in the end, if you were going to use Pro Tools a lot, it might be, or rather, if you're going to use Pro Tools on a limited basis, it'd probably be worth it to just do it to pay for it monthly. Whereas if you're going to use it a lot, you might as well buy it, because at some point you're going to end up having paid more for it than it's actually worth buying it. And then on top of all of the features it has, it is completely compatible with a lot of hardware and software that is also designed by Avid. And it just has a ton of built-in effects, a ton of built-in instruments. It's got everything you need for recording, mixing, mastering, pitch shifting, compressors, equalizers of every kind of variety. It's also super popular in the film industry because it has more capabilities to work with video than most other DAWs have, including the ability to read timestamps, which is super helpful if you're doing post-production. And overall just has a ton of things going for it, which, you know, obviously that is why it is widely renowned in the industry. But for $1,000 and all of that stuff packed in, do you really need all of that? And the answer for most people is going to be no. However, it has a lot of functionality that, and as I said before, that post-production could really use, that will really help to streamline the process. So in that sense, you know, anybody doing post-production, any film audio, will find Pro Tools to be an invaluable resource. For everybody else, it's probably not a thing that you really need. And one of the people that I worked with said it well in that the DAW that you get doesn't necessarily matter as much as how you use it and how you learn to use it. So that's an important bit of something or another to think about. Something else of note is I haven't found, when looking, whether or not it supports VST plugins. Now, I know that a previous version of Pro Tools did not, and I don't know if that's still the case or not, but that is an important thing to think about, is that Pro Tools does have a host, a veritable army of its own plugins that you can use, plugins and instruments, but sometimes you want that third-party touch, and without modding the program, which there are mods for that, without modding the program, it doesn't support VST. So it has a little bit of a harder time finding or being compatible with third-party plugins. And so for me, I use Play, I use Mach 5, and I have 6 other third-party VST plugins that I use in Sonar X2. And I wouldn't be able to use any of those without fiddling with the programming for Pro Tools. Assuming that's still the case. I never found it, so I don't know. And then one other thing is that one of the other people that I work with that uses Pro Tools also uses Cubase, and she says that she wouldn't use Cubase at all if it wasn't for the fact that Pro Tools does not have a really good MIDI composition system. So another thing to think about, if you're a MIDI composer, it might not work as well unless you are doing composition for any form of film production. Looks like I'm only going to be able to get 2 DAWs done in this video, but I do plan on doing more, and hopefully I'll get all of those recorded, you know, within the next week or something, and not a year, which tends to happen for my videos. So I hope you have a good day. I hope this was informative. Let me know whether or not you thought it was informative, because, you know, any form of critique, positive or negative, is very informative as to how I do my videos, what types of videos I should be doing. Maybe like talking about X4, Sonar X4 should take an entire video instead of half of one. Maybe I shouldn't talk about Pro Tools if I'm never going to use it. You know, things like that. So yeah, let me know. Ask me any questions you want in the comments below. Like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.